Everything is happening with OpenAI. Threads tests their new TweetDeck. Google's AI overviews offer some interesting results. And we talk marketing pitfalls. All this and more on today's Strong Coffee Drip. Hi, everyone. It's Monday, but it's kind of Friday. We're calling this one episode 15.5 because we recorded it on Friday and only to discover that my mic wasn't working properly. So we're re-recording it here on Monday. Iain, thank you so much for coming back. And we're wearing the same clothes that we did on Friday for no particular reason because no one's going to see the other one. But as you can see, Iain and I riding as a pair today. Duncan is still gallivanting in Europe. Iain, how you doing? How was your weekend?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, it was nice, thanks. Fairly quiet, but nice and relaxing. Got out in the yard, which was good.
That's what I did too. Yeah. I mean, the sun did come out for a while, then it rained, and then the sun came out, so that was all right. We're talking, as mentioned, we're going to talk about pitfalls today. Did you ever play, there was an Atari game called Pitfall. Did you ever play Pitfall?
I did not play Pitfall, no. I'm aware of it. I know the game, it's a classic, but I don't know one I've ever played, unless I played it as a very young lad. I'm not sure. I don't know.
You would remember playing Pitfall, Iain.
Sure.
Yeah, Pitfall was an Atari game. We've got a Atari in the office. Maybe we'll play it someday. And then in preparation for this, I actually found it online and gave it a try a couple days ago. Just awful at it. I used to be good at it as a kid, but essentially what it is, it's a guy that looks like Indiana Jones, and he runs around and he jumps over scorpions and he hangs off of vines and he goes over little ponds and stuff. The most difficult part is in some of the ponds, there's crocodiles and their mouths go like this, and you got to jump on their heads when their mouth is down so you don't get eaten. Can't do that on the computer, so I'll have to give it a go when we're back in the office. So as we kind of rack up episodes, and like I mentioned, we're on 15.5 today, I have found that we kind of stray away from marketing from time to time, and we do talk about old school video games. We went through the whole Mario thing. I brought up Alex Kidd Miracle World. We talked about Golden Tee. We've already talked about video games. The other thing that we tend to stray away from, probably because of the backgrounds of myself and Duncan, is we tend to talk a little bit about golf too, because that's where we came from. We came from the golf business. Now, Duncan, the former golf professional, isn't here this week, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about golf, because on your end of things, I think it's been made abundantly clear at this point you are from Scotland. We did some background checks too. You are from there.
Yes.
Okay, you're not faking your accent.
No.
But what's interesting about Scotland and where you're from is you grew up very, very close to the old course at St. Andrews, correct? It was literally like in your backyard, not too far away, right?
Yeah, right. So, yes, I am. We moved around a bit, but I'm from a place called Fife, which would be like the county north of sort of Edinburgh. So, and Fife is where St. Andrews is. St. Andrews is in that same county as well. I was from the south, but it's at the north. So, yeah, it's maybe about a 30-minute drive away. Maybe a little more. And yeah, St. Andrews, the home of golf, right on our doors.
Yes, the home of golf. Now, you've never played it, correct?
I've never played the old course. No, I've played.
Been there.
I've been there many times. Yeah, but I've never. I've as some people may know, some people may not know, St. Andrews is a public course. It's open to the general public, and it's right on the street. You know, as you walk along the sidewalk, you are literally 3 or 4 feet away from the fairway. So yeah, it's beautiful. It's easy to see. You can kind of cut through the golf course and get to the beach, and yeah.
Which you literally can. It is, yeah, when I played it, I remember people walking across the fairway. There are paths and stuff, but it wasn't uncommon just to see somebody walking their dog through it, because, yeah, it's basically a big public park right beside the water, and then the town is on the other side, and people just kind of go back and forth across it. So, and the home of the Open every 5 years on the 5.
Yes.
So I believe next year it'll be there too.
Absolutely.
So there you go. We talked about golf, even though you don't really play a lot of golf. So
not anymore, no.
We covered those bases too. I'm in the same boat. I don't play very much even anymore either, but maybe we should get out and give it a go. All right. Old school video games, check. Golf, check. Let's get down to business. It's been a very busy and crazy couple of months for OpenAI. So let's review some of the Cole's notes, if you will. They roll out ChatGPT 4.0. That just happened, and it's absolutely insane. a few very high-profile departures, including a co-founder and people responsible for ensuring these tools align with the best interests of humanity, which I would say is probably a pretty important role.
Yes.
Scarlett Johansson claimed that the voice of ChatGPT is a clone of her voice from the movie Her, although now there's word that it isn't, and somebody came forward saying, I represent the person that was the voice, so that's still a little bit to be determined, but nonetheless, still kind of an interesting sidebar in this whole thing. And then just recently, last week, OpenAI and News Corp agreed to a content sharing deal where some of the content across some of the newspapers, New York Times, for example, will now be kind of shared across on ChatGPT and OpenAI as well. So OpenAI is rolling, whether they're rolling in a positive fashion or a negative fashion or both. They're rolling right now. What would you say, out of all the things that have happened in the past few months, what part of that whole story is most interesting to you?
I think just simply the pace of advancement is interesting in itself. I mean, as you mentioned, GPT-4o is out now, and having used that and the chat feature, it is incredible. You know, it's scary, but it is incredible that how far the tech has come. And yeah, the response time is, I believe it's down to 300 milliseconds, which is essentially what you would expect from having a two-way conversation with another
person. Yeah,
it's extremely quick. So that's mind blowing. But like I say, it is a bit scary. It is all a bit Black Mirror. But yeah, the thing that I find, I guess, most interesting and unfortunately also scary is the people leaving that you mentioned. Two very high profile people, Ilya Sutskever, who was the chief scientist, and Iain Lika, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he was the co-leader of what was the name of the team? Super Alignment Team, which is, as you mentioned, the team who focuses on sort of the safety of humanity as we start to try and build these machines which are smarter than we are. So yes, the fact that these people left, and Iain Lika actually made quite a few comments on Twitter about his concerns that the original goals of OpenAI, which were to be open and to make something which is for the benefit of humanity and safe to use, he had serious concerns that those goals were no longer really in the sights of OpenAI and that they had lost their way. And when the person who's in charge of making sure the human race doesn't get wiped out leaves your company, that's concerning.
Not a good thing.
Yeah, that's not a good thing to me. So yeah, but like you say, a very, very interesting time.
We don't have anybody at Strong Coffee in charge of making sure the human race gets wiped out. So might be something we want to look at.
Sure. Yeah.
In the future. I'll talk to the guys, see what we can come up with. Yeah, and you're right, that those two key departures, and there were others as well. Those were kind of the key ones, but there were others as well. That's quite concerning. And yeah, the speed of which everything is happening. You think about, back in the early days of social media, where social media tools and channels were rolling out, and we thought that was quick. Like, oh, there's another one. Here comes another one. And we've documented many of them on the podcast. Some of the ones that worked and some of the ones that failed. We thought that was lightning fast. And now you think about what's happening with AI and OpenAI and all these tools that are coming out now, you can't even keep up. Like, I guarantee you, from the time we recorded the first version of this podcast that didn't work on Friday to now here on Monday morning, I bet you if we went and did some digging, there's probably 3 or 4 new things that happened that hadn't happened yet when we recorded last time, which is crazy. For me, on the what's the most interesting side is the idea of AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and whether or not that's kind of being achieved, maybe in the background, is kind of what's most interesting to me. So I guess when we talk about this idea of AGI, what exactly is it? Well, I saw an interview with Sam Altman, and somebody asked him, well, what is it to you? And obviously people have different answers, etc. And he basically said it was the equivalent to a human that you could hire as a coworker, and it would learn things like a human. So less just about giving it data and then it spits it back out to you, and more about how, like a human, it starts to figure things out on its own and learn how to do things on its own. And while that is extremely powerful and very interesting, it's ridiculously kind of scary too, where if all of a sudden you've almost created a human in the form of non-human, a computer, if you will, or a program, and it has the ability to learn and do things on its own, it's almost like a virtual coworker, right? So to me, the most interesting is that's kind of the genie in the bottle. And if you think about some of the things that have happened going back to the end of last year, where something happened where there was a bit of a fuss over there, and Sam Altman was removed, and all this kind of, then he came back. I'm almost wondering, like, maybe they've already achieved it. And you can go and look online and you'll see a million different articles of people speculating. Obviously, no one really knows unless you're in the room. But if that genie is already being created and it's in a bottle right now, everything that needs to happen out there to ensure that genie stays in the bottle, and when it does come out, it doesn't just ruin humanity, is interesting and concerning. So, yeah. Where is it? Who knows? And it'll be interesting to see where that ends up going. That's kind of the $1 million question right now is, the stuff that they're putting out right now, ChatGPT 4.0, well, that's been in development for a while and it doesn't get released until, a little bit down the road. What's in the hopper for them right now?
Absolutely. That's the question. Like you say, I think it's very fair to assume that the technology that they have behind closed doors has got to be a year or two, perhaps, advanced of what we're seeing. And when the things that we're seeing are as
ridiculous
and as this is, then I think it's a very big question, like you say, where they are behind closed doors.
And I, in doing some research for this too, if you're ever looking to kill a little bit of time, there's a couple rabbit holes you can go down. You can go down the Q-star rabbit hole, which is one thing. The other one that I found intriguing and concerning is the P-Doom rabbit hole. Yes. Now, you know a little bit about P-Doom too. Do you want to explain what P-Doom is?
So P-Doom is the probability of doom, whereby doom would be the extinction of the human race. And a lot of people have very varying estimates on where the probability of doom actually lies. But some people are saying, it's between 10 and 90%, which is obviously a pretty big window. But the thing that concerned me, I think, was one of the people that left OpenAI very recently. His probability of doom was 70%, which seems very concerningly high to me.
Yes, that's I would say 5 is concerningly high.
Yeah.
And then you see some of the numbers from people that have either been in the room or very much around things that are going on right now, and their numbers are higher. It's interesting time. So we'll see where this all goes. But I do think, AI being rolled out in a safe manner has so many benefits. There's so many things that it can help us with and solve problems and make life easier and better for people. It's just going to come down to, can we as humans roll it out properly, keep it safe, be responsible, and that remains to be seen. So
sure.
Let's change the subject over to something that's a little less P-Doom. We're going to talk about do we care? Kind of a fun thing we do from time to time. I've got 2 recent news stories about digital marketing, but the real question is, do we as marketers care? Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. Iain tends to not care about a lot of the things, but we'll see where it goes this time. Story number 1. Mark Zuckerberg recently shared some screenshots of Threads testing a TweetDeck-like interface with columns. He called it pinned columns for threads on web. But let's be honest, it's TweetDeck. It's TweetDeck for threads is exactly what it is. Now, my interesting question to you, Iain, as a true fan of the OG TweetDeck, which we talked about a couple episodes ago, do you care about this possibility of a TweetDeck-like system in place for threads?
I'm going to have to stick with the status quo and not care about this one either. Sorry, Brian. I think it's interesting, but I am not a Threads user personally, and I obviously when Threads first came out, it seemed very, very popular, got a lot of traction very, very quickly from being in the news and everything. A lot of people joined up. but we spoke, I think it was a few weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, about that number starting to drop off. Now, I don't know if it is leveled out or if it is starting to grow again, but I think it's more to do with the fact that it's threads than the layout that is the reason I don't really care. I also kind of feel like, as much as we loved TweetDeck back in the day, the OG one, it was a product of its time, and it was great at that time, at least a decade ago now, more. So yeah, is it still relevant? Maybe, and maybe a lot of people will get great use out of it, and they will care. But for me, it's a no. Sorry, Zuck.
Wow. I try to find something here that you'll care about every week.
Yeah, I know. So,
9 times out of 10, don't care. Don't care.
I care about Pitfall in St Andrews.
Okay, yeah. If Pitfall was re-released, would you care?
I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay. Okay. For me, I'm kind of in your boat. I use Threads a little bit and experiment with it, but I don't use it a ton. I do appreciate that they're trying to make the web interface better, because as we know from using OG TweetDeck way back in the day, that really changed how we were able to use TweetDeck on a desktop computer by having multiple streams going and searches, etc. At that time I was doing social for a brand. That was a lifesaver, having that ability to get a nice layout across your screen. So if it does the same things for power Threads users, then awesome. That's fantastic. And I think anything you can do to allow users to be to make Threads easier for them will probably encourage more brands and larger accounts to get involved, which ultimately might allow Threads to grow. So in that regard, I care a little bit, but we'll see where it goes. I mean, they're testing it right now. Nothing has come out, so it's just simply testing. But I would imagine there's been a call for that kind of thing. So we'll see where it goes. And you know what? Maybe even for a guy like me with Strong Coffee, would we consider using Threads more if it was a little bit more user friendly in that regard for a brand, perhaps? But we'll see where it goes.
I think one other thing that is worth mentioning is the original TweetDeck let you log into multiple accounts in one user interface, but I don't think this Threads one is going to do that, right? It's just, you're kind of just is that correct? So
it wasn't very clear. He gave it a one-liner and showed a couple of screenshots. So you're right. If you could do multiple accounts as well, which TweetDeck you could do, that was pretty beneficial as well.
Yeah, because if you're working for a number of clients, it's handy to have 3 or 4 accounts open at one time. Whereas so I'm not sure whether Threads will offer that, but if it does, then I might switch my no to a yes. That might interest me.
Well, I'm going to jot that down. Here we go. Jot it down, and we'll see where it comes. You know what else it could be is maybe it's not multiple Threads accounts, but you could also use Instagram in it, which obviously they're hand in hand. Is that something that would be of interest to brands or to kind of power users? So hey, we'll circle back on this one, Iain.
Sounds good.
I just want you to care about Threads one day.
Thank you.
Okay. Story number 2. Google has introduced AI overviews in search results. A simple way to describe this, I saw an article somewhere describe it as Google does the Googling for you. Using AI, Google will help you better find solutions to your problems by collecting information from a variety of sources instead of simply presenting a list of single sources. While the technology is still new, it shows us how search could change in the future. This one goes a little bit deeper than the Threads one and their pinned columns, but the question remains, do we care? I can go first on this one. I care about this one way more than the Threads one because I think Google and search is way more relevant and we care about it on a much more regular basis at our agency. I think it's kind of that as search evolves, things like this are going to happen. Now, obviously, there's been some really interesting and funny results from it as the kinks kind of get worked out. I saw, for example, people were putting in things. There was one that showed, if your cheese keeps falling off your pizza, to put glue on the cheese. Obviously, that's not the case. But what it's doing is it's finding little snippets from different sources and pulling them all together so you get more of a true answer to your question, as opposed to here's a list of possible answers, you go figure it out on your own. So I definitely think this is the way that search is going. There's definitely some things they need to work on. We can't use it here. It's not available in Canada yet. I've seen it in action, but I haven't been able to use it yet. So I guess the answer, I care about this more than Threads. And I think I care more about this is giving us a glimpse as to what search is going to look like in the future, as opposed to necessarily this is how Google is doing it right this second. What about you?
Yeah, 100% agree. I care about this one a lot more. I think it's interesting. Obviously, for some time, Google has been taking this approach with the search engine results where it hasn't been AI to my knowledge, but when you type in a question, it will sort of generate a result, if it can pull it from somewhere like Wikipedia, where it just, at the top of the search engine results, rather than it being a link, it will try to answer your question. Now, in the past, that's always been very, very simple questions, and obviously the AI integration is trying to let this do it with much more complex questions. The example they gave was, how do I clean a fabric couch? And it did come up with, it said the various ways you can do it, or you can clean the whole thing, you can spot clean it, you can dry clean it, you can do this and that. And I thought that was interesting. The one thing that concerned me slightly, I guess, or not concerned me, but is the direction that I think Google is going to go with this, is that there are far more ads higher up the search engine results now based on your questions, or there certainly were in the example that they shared. And so, yes, does this actually improve search, I guess, is the real question. If you're looking for something specific or a specific web page, that's now going to be probably further down the page than it was before. So I think it's probably going to be a change in direction for how we search and what search engine results look like in the future.
Yeah. And you're right. Like a search engine page, it's like real estate. Now you've got to assign part of that real estate to this AI, the snippet at the top. Then you're going to have ads in there somewhere, and then you're going to start seeing organic results. So it just keeps pushing the organic further down the chain.
Exactly.
And then to your point too about how else it could change. How do we create content, or how does content get indexed, or do you change the type of content you create to try to play up to the AI side of things, as opposed to previously we're trying to rank high organically, or is there a tie there where it still pulls from higher ranked pages into the response it gives you? And you mentioned the ads. Well, we run a lot of ads through Google with our agency. Is there a fall off in the amount of leads and traffic that are generated from those ads because they're being shoved down the pipe too? So yeah, there's a lot of things, but I guess, like we deal with all the time in the world of digital, things change. You have to just figure it out and keep moving forward.
Indeed.
Now, I mentioned the cheese and the pizza one. There was another example. There was a Twitter thread that was just going with all these crazy examples of things that this new tool was saying. And somebody asked it the question of, has a dog ever played in the NBA? Now, you watch a lot of basketball. I only watch it at playoffs. I'm like a playoff basketball guy. I've watched a few games recently. You watch a fair amount of basketball, but I think it's safe to say between the two of us, we have never witnessed a dog play in the NBA, correct?
That's my recollection. I do not remember.
Preseason, regular season, postseason, I've never seen it. According to Google and this new AI offering, it said that a dog had played in the NBA before. So I don't know where it got that from, whether it was pulled from some sort of satirical site or something. But I did do a bit of research because I'm all about research. I even went a step further and I went and looked at Airbud. Airbud, if you go back and look, he didn't ever play in the NBA. He played in a much lower league, like a high school league. He actually played for the Fernfield Timberwolves. Right. So yeah, he didn't even play in the NBA. So I'm not sure where Google was getting that from.
I don't know.
I'll keep my eyes open.
Yes,
but I haven't seen it.
See that?
Yeah, and to stick with our golf theme too, I think it's due time that they make an Airbud golf movie. I think it sets up well. Airbud can be outside, whether he's swinging a club, which I don't know how he would do with his little paws, or is he taking the ball and throwing it or placing the ball? I'm not sure. But I call on those in charge of creating the Airbud franchise to consider a golf movie with Airbud in it. And I've even come up with some suggestions for a title for this soon to be released, I hope, Airbud golf movie. I think Dogleg Right would be an outstanding name. It ties in the golf reference and a dog's leg. And the other one would be In the Rough, but if you spell rough, RUFF.
That's tremendous. I like that.
I'm giving these away on our podcast for free. So do what you will with them, Airbud and team. And if this ever does come to fruition and we see Airbud Dogleg Right or Airbud In the Rough, we got to get something, like a couple of hoodies or something, right? We got to get something out of it. Airbud hoodie would be fantastic. So, there you go. So we've covered off Google, and I guess for the most part we care about the Google story, not so much about the Thread story, but we can both agree that we want to see a golfing version of Airbud.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Maybe I should put Airbud golf movie as one of the Do We Cares next week when Duncan's back and see what he says.
We should put it as pre-production on IMDb, and
yeah. Okay. We'll see what we can do. And finally, let's talk about marketing pitfalls, not the Indiana Jones swinging on the vine, marketing pitfalls. Now, every job has its pitfalls, and we all do our best to avoid them. Marketing is no different. What's a pitfall that you do your best to avoid, and what's your strategy to avoid them? Now, you work with a variety of clients across a variety of campaigns every day, Ian, being a project manager. What's a pitfall that you do your best to avoid, and what's the strategy when you see it coming or you got to get out of it?
Sure. I think a big pitfall is not setting clear and measurable goals before a project or a campaign begins. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a new product or a new service or a new campaign, and thinking that others will just be excited about it as well, sort of thing. But you really need to, at the outset, set out, what does success look like? How are we going to measure this? Are we setting up all the right tools so that we can measure it accurately? And using all the data you can, not letting your gut decide, oh, it's a bit lower than I expected. You've got the data there, work out why things are going well or why things aren't going as well as you maybe anticipated. So yes, absolutely. Data. Use it, set up your goals so that you know exactly what you want the end result to be, and take things from there. The answers are in the numbers.
Yeah, and to your point, like, decide on what success looks like. When you're sitting down at the end of a campaign, I want to see this. I want to see, a sales number that looks like this, or we generated X number of leads, or we had this many people come to an event. What is when I'm sitting down at the end of the day, what's that result that would make you happy? Figure that out. And now we start working backwards to determine what do we need to do to get to the end. And that's where, to your point, tools and data come into play, and setting it up like that. For me, I do a lot of strategy work. And I think when it comes to pitfalls when creating a marketing strategy, the idea of keeping your eye on the prize is something that, you stray off of that and you fall into one of these pitfalls. It's not getting derailed by things that might be happening out there, like a new tool shows up on a Friday afternoon and you're working on your strategy the following week. And it's like, I need to switch my whole strategy over to now. This looks cool. I found this shiny new object. I need to go over here. Keep your eye on the prize, identify the goals and the, what does success look like you mentioned. That's the strategy that I'm building towards. If a tool or a strategy or something else comes along that you think might work into it, then let's consider it. But don't start straying because of what other people are doing or other tools, etc., appear in the marketplace, because you'll never ultimately build a good strategy. I mean, there's fundamentals that no matter what, considering your audience first and etc., things like that, those aren't never going to change. Those are kind of what you build your strategy on, those foundational pieces. And then you figure out what else might need to happen to to build out that strategy. But yeah, it can be hard as you're building one out and you see this shiny new object, or you read this article and you want to use it to consider it anyways, but you don't want to alter your whole strategy to all of a sudden follow this over here. So test things out first. You want to make sure that they're tried and true before you start working them into a marketing strategy. So that's my big one.
Yeah.
You had one other one, right?
I was going to say, I think having realistic expectations as well is another thing to bear in mind. Particularly when it comes to things which are more of slow burn projects, whether it's starting a new social media channel or getting into SEO, organic SEO, and things like that. I think it's easy to look for great results really, really, really quickly, and that
quick wins.
Platforms kind of work. If you set up a new YouTube channel, you're just not going to get 5 million views in your first 6 weeks. It's just not going to happen. Similar with SEO, if you're on the second page of the search engine results and you want to get to the number 1 or number 2 slot, that's not going to happen in 6 or 8 weeks. It's one of those things that you continue to work on over the long haul. And yeah, it's a slow process, but you might see results after a year or a year and a half, or you just keep working at it. So I guess have realistic expectations and don't give up on things too quickly if you aren't seeing the results you want right away.
Unless it's threads, because Iain hates threads. Yeah. But that's an excellent point, Iain, because you're right. People always want the quick win, and we talk a lot about digital being, we can do things really quickly. It doesn't mean there's going to be an immediate impact. When I speak and to different groups, I've got a slide that I use all the time where it's kind of like a matrix. It's got 3 columns. On the one side, it's the immediate impact column, and that's where advertising comes in. Like realistically, if you needed to get 500 people to your website this afternoon, you could do it through Google ads, Facebook ads, whatever the case may be. You could do it. It's going to cost you money, but realistically it could happen. And then on the other side, the long tail approach, that's where, as you talked about, search engine optimization, creating content, laying the foundational pieces for your marketing. That's where those lie, where you're not going to see immediate results, but over time you start to build on that foundation and you build a more comprehensive marketing strategy and marketing footprint. When Duncan and I started our golf website that we chatted about a few episodes ago, I remember writing on that golf website for months, 5 days a week for like 2 or 3 months before we saw our first visitor through Google Analytics, somebody from Finland who, if they didn't speak English, wouldn't even know what we were writing about. But you think about how long that took to create the content, create the website, get indexed by Google, and then show up high enough somewhere for whatever term it was that somebody actually saw it, clicked on it, and came to the website. That wasn't a 3-day, 1 week process. That was months and months and months. Now, because we built that foundation properly, one visitor led to 1,000, led to 10,000, led to 100,000, a million, and so on, because you built it from the foundation up. So, if you're looking for quick wins, which, can exist, but they're definitely on the paid side, consider that. But a good marketing strategy or a campaign probably has a little of column A, a little of column B, and then right down the middle of that is where you see social media. To your point, if you're just starting a social channel, probably not going to see immediate impact. If you've got some established social media channels, maybe you would see a little bit of immediate impact, but at the same time, you're still building towards that long tail approach too. So that kind of falls down the middle. So a little of A, a little of B, a little of C is probably a good way to think about it. But yeah, you're right. Like if a client has come to us and they need results immediately, there's certain things we can do, but you still need to temper expectations where we can start to work to get you web traffic tomorrow. But keep in mind, if you totally ignore the foundational pieces, when your ad budget runs out and you put all your eggs over in that basket, there's nothing else going on, you're going to just fall right off the map again because no one knows who you are. So by spreading it across multiple things, you might not see as much immediate as you're looking for, but you're building it the right way.
Absolutely.
So, that's all I have to say about that. All right. Well, 15.5 is in the books. This one sounded incredibly similar to what we recorded on Friday. I think this one's a little bit better, so that's good. It sounds better because my microphone works now. So, Iain, thank you very much for hopping on again. I know I sent you a message on the weekend like, oh, guess what we're doing on Monday? And I'm sure you weren't very excited for it, but thank you very much for hopping on again. Thanks to all of you for tuning in, wherever you find your podcasts or you see us on social, etc. We'll probably be back as a 3 team next week. I would assume Duncan will be back, and we'll get at it again. But everyone, enjoy your week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Iain, have a wonderful week, and let's get back to work. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.